the other day they had a Q&A conversation with Bishop Kim Lucas from Colorado on feminism and faith. And I just watched the YouTube video this morning. It was really good. Did you go to that, April?
Yeah, I was there. It was lovely.
Artemis did a great job facilitating that. So it was good. Anyway, if you get a chance, go to YouTube and look up Canterbury House and Bishop Kim Lucas.
Okay.
All right. Well, it is
it time?
12:01. So I would like to welcome everyone to this month's Zoom assembly. And I'm going to immediately turn this over to the co-chairs of the Equal Justice Initiative Task Force, the Reverend Mary Erickson and the Reverend Jordan Bishop. And I believe the third co-chair of that is April French. So I think you three are going to do some presenting before we open it up, Mary. So take it away, Mary.
Yes, exactly. I'm going to start. I was trying to remember though, Bobby, when we first started meeting unofficially, because I cannot remember.
It was shortly after our Alabama pilgrimage, I believe.
Okay.
And Megan, you can, I think that's when we first convened that.
What time of year was that?
That would have been April.
April. I was thinking March, April. So in about March or April, one of the things I think this came, Meg, when you were sort of, you and others were making your way around the diocese and asking, what are we not doing? And this kept coming up, right? We're not doing the work of racial reconciliation. The National Church wants us to be doing this work. And so it's sort of an ad hoc group came together in sort of the April time frame, and we didn't really have any structure. We met regularly, but we got some stuff done. We started with, we were behind the scenes encouraging, pressuring people to do the return of the artifacts, and that was exciting. We did some resolutions that Jordan will talk about in a minute, but it was ad hoc. We kind of liked flying under the radar for a little while, but then made the decision that we really needed to be formalized. And Jordan, I'm just to take this and you can take the resolutions. How's that? So a few months ago, we went before the Diocesan Council and we have become an official committee of the diocese, which is nice because now we have, the blessing of the diocese. So that's great. We have put a structure in place. I'm going to start with what we have accomplished before that structure and then really talk through how we got to where we are today. So I'm going to ask Jordan to step in and talk about the resolutions. Oh, Melinda.
Can I just leap in? Because a significant piece of that was the on sacred ground groups.
Okay.
So I think that's important to throw in because that was really that was the inspiration in large part for the pilgrimage,
right?
In the first place. So I think that really was the starting point.
So it's interesting because I think we all came to this from different places and different things, but I don't think we've ever actually talked about that as a group. So that's very helpful. Thank you for that.
And then those of us teeing up on what Melinda just said, our main sacred ground group last year was the convention deputation for General Convention. So going to convention and hearing all of these wonderful resolutions and seeing many of them pass that next Jordan will talk about, I think that really gelled us. And again, that would have been July that we did that.
Well, and that's a lot of our resolutions did come directly out of that, the work that y'all did from General Convention. So that was helpful.
And then there was that pesky guy called Joe Hubbard who
he was trouble.
Reached out and said, let's do some stuff.
And the great thing about Joe, when we were talking about the artifacts, is Joe is also an attorney and he had some great advice for us about what was possible. And because of that, we are where we are around all of that, which was great. So that's who we are. And it's an ad hoc, it's now a blessed group, but it's kind of still a ragtag group of us. I would have it no other way. So the resolutions, it was one of the big things that happened, really being inspired, as Bobby said, from General Convention. And do you want to pick that up, Jordan?
Yeah. Yeah. So our works thus far has really been guided by the resolutions that we passed at the last diocesan convention. And so I'm just going to this will take just a couple minutes, just quickly kind of remind us of what was passed at General Convention last year. And then, you'll see throughout the rest of our conversation today kind of where that work has led us. So the first thing was Resolution 24-1, the establishment of the Equal Justice Task Force. And this just established us as an official group, as Mary had just mentioned. The next one, 24-2, was truth telling and listening along with our Indigenous siblings. And that basically committed us as a group and as a diocese to building relationships with Northern Arapaho, Eastern Shoshone folks in active listening through historical research and dialogue and exploring reparations and reconciliation efforts as well. Along with that was Resolution 24-3, and that was expressing remorse for Indigenous boarding schools and fact-finding mission. So that was acknowledging that there was harm done for generations with the boarding schools, and it commits the diocese to furthering research into that. And that involves many things like understanding who was there, how many survivor testimonies, and investment in community-led healing initiatives as well. And I'm just going through these quick. I know these are massive, massive topics, and we'll talk a little bit more about each of them throughout this. And then the last one was 24-4, memorializing victims of racial violence. And this really directed us as a church to partner with historical and justice organizations to memorialize victims of lynching and racial violence in Wyoming, including Indigenous and our Chinese American communities, and just in general promoting education around racial violence in our state. And those are the 4 resolutions that we passed that were related to this group in particular.
So that was a big lift, and they all passed, which was fantastic to have the support of the diocese. And the other big thing that we did was around the artifacts. It was a conversation. So the Arapaho artifacts was a conversation that started very early on, and I think we were all sort of passionate about that conversation. And with Joe's encouragement, we went to various people in the diocese and said, we think it's time to do this. And it happened way faster than I think any of us imagined that it could. So we were instrumental in sort of putting that quiet pressure and encouragement behind the scenes to help that to happen. And then many of us were a part of the actual event, which was incredibly moving. We created some liturgies around that I think we might be looking at repurposing at some point. And it was a very moving ceremony. So in just our first few months, we got a few big things accomplished, which was amazing. I'm not going to go too much more into that. So then we decided it was time to actually organize ourselves. So we went on a retreat, which Jordan hosted. So he's going to talk about that.
Yeah, so we met just as a small steering committee of about 9 members, clergy, lay members, some staff, mostly non-staff, met in Lander in November of last year. And really the goal was just to discuss the structure of what this group looks like, the ongoing projects, some of them that you've heard about, and kind of what do we want to do going forward? What are our big hopes and dreams of how we want to live out the gospel here in the diocese? And so we expressed, our dreams and our fears, and kind of it was a kind of a first step of kind of meeting together and figuring out what that would look like. One of the things that came out of that retreat that we'll move into next was the subcommittees that we have established. And so we have 3 subcommittees, and folks that are the leaders of those subcommittees will each take a turn and talk about those now.
Right. April, are you on?
Yes, I am.
Start with you. You're first on the list.
All right. So I happened to be the initial author of Resolution 4, 24-4, for our diocesan convention, which was the resolution committing us to memorialize victims of racial violence and then provide education around Wyoming's history of racial injustice. So that this particular subcommittee of the Equal Justice Initiative Task Force is directly downline from that resolution. And we're still ascertaining who's interested in being in that subcommittee from within our task force. But essentially, the things we will be partnering together to consider doing and trying to figure out a way to do include things like partnering with the actual Equal Justice Initiative, which is in Montgomery, Alabama, and their Community Remembrance Project for erecting narrative markers at sites of 5 documented lynchings in Wyoming. And then there's an aspect in that resolution on partnering with tribal governments to erect culturally appropriate memorials. This we would probably coordinate with another subcommittee that you'll hear about soon. And then partnering with the folks in Rock Springs who are part of the Chinese Massacre Requiem Project to see how we might be able to assist in that current project to erect a bronze statue at the site of the racial killings in 1885. There's also then a discussion around creating events centered around education and dialogue at the newly dedicated Minetta Simpson Institute at the Heart Mountain Interpretive Center, which is between Powell and Cody. And there will be, and I think this will be discussed soon, but an Equal Justice Summit from September 5th through 7th. There are multiple things that we will be discussing. One thing that I am keeping my eye on in relation to this is that right now, a bill has been vetoed by the governor. Today is the last day of the Wyoming legislature. It was a veto-proof majority that voted for it, and it basically says that private funds can't be used for DEI initiatives. I'm guessing that's more for the public spaces. I need to figure that out. But that's not constitutional. But we just want to be aware of it. I'm just going to throw that out there. I'm going to watch for it and see what's going on. So.
Great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
At a retreat, we talked about a whole lot of issues. We talked about racial justice, which April just touched on, economic justice, climate justice, LGBTQ plus justice, gender equality, criminal justice. And where we ended up creating the committees were around these resolutions so that we have clear marching orders. And there's an additional 4th that we'll talk about at the end. So based on that, hold on, getting to my document here. The next one we want to talk about is the Indigenous People Fact-Finding and Truth-Telling Subcommittee. That's quite a mouthful. There were 2 resolutions that came out of convention. One was just that, a resolution of the Episcopal Church to truth-telling and listening to our Native American siblings. And the other one was about expressing remorse to harm suffered by Indigenous children at Wyoming Indigenous boarding and residential schools, and also committed to fact-finding. So there's a few things that are happening. Some of them have been happening for quite a while, and now they're just sort of kind of living a little bit under this committee. One is, and this is new, the Wind River Indian Reservation pilgrimage, which will be held May 18th through 21st. We've never done anything like this before. This is being led by Roxanne Friday and Bobby Fitzhugh. I don't know if you want to jump in, Bobby, and share anything about that.
Yes, and I apologize, Roxanne is sick, so she's not able to be with us today. But yes, we're really excited about having both Joe Hubbard and Sarah Augustine, the author of The Land Is Not Empty, will provide a initial evening conversation about the doctrine of discovery, dismantling the doctrine of discovery. So that'll be kind of how we kick off. The event will be at the Shoshone Rose Hotel and Casino. That's where we'll stay, and our meeting space will be there. And we'll get on a bus and go to these sites. We'll go to the sites of the building of the boarding schools. We will present a plaque to commemorate the dead at one of the cemeteries that some of the people in that cemetery were relocated back from the Carlisle boarding school that had such infamy a number of years ago. And we will have listening sessions with each of the tribes. And then we're going to go to the Buffalo, the Bison Relocation Center, and we're having lunch at Patty Joe's church. Patty Joe's cooking us lunch in Morton Kinnear, Patty Joe and her staff of caterers. We should be getting registration information out, I hope, by next week. We do not have it. We're holding that to 25 people because that's the size bus that we are renting. So the cost will be $150 per person. The diocese will pick up the rest of that from a couple different sources. Thank you, Megan, for seeking that out. Yeah, it's coming along. Roxanne's excited. She's got a whole cast of characters from both tribes, tribal elders, that will speak to us about a number of things. So we're really excited about the work that Roxanne's putting into this. And again, we're just very blessed to have Sarah and Joe tagging along with us in this entire journey. And then at the end of the time, Sarah will come back and sort of wrap up what we've experienced, what we've learned. So that's that specific thing.
Great, thank you. It is exciting. It's really come together. It sounds wonderful. The other one is not something that this has been going on for a while, but I've been working with a team of people from the Wind River on a documentary that really is exploring the culture and the identity of the people of the Wind River and how that has been impacted by churches, mission churches, both past and present, sort of how that impacts their continued faith lives today. It took about 2 years to really get that up and going because we had a lot of work to do in the beginning to build relationship and trust and all of that. But that is something that is happening. And I think there's an opportunity to pull some things from that along the way that we can use in different educational and informational venues. So that's exciting. We are also, we need to do some research. So part of part of listening and all that, we need to find the facts. So we have approval to go into the American Heritage Center in Laramie and dig into the archives. Sorry, I'm having trouble talking today. Dig into the archives and speak with the historians, museum curators, and I think not just there, but we've got some people here at our museum that are really smart about this stuff. So really seeking out the people who can help to fill out the story for us. And then then developing methods of how we communicate all of this back to the diocese, articles, maybe some of these videos out of the documentary. We've started doing book studies. We'll talk about some of that later. But how do we talk about this? And is it, a series of Zooms? We can't just learn this in our little group. We need to share this with the whole diocese. That's the real power of it. So we will be doing that as we move along. There was a third resolution around our Indigenous brothers and sisters, which was to establish Indigenous services in October. And I mentioned earlier that we did create a couple of liturgies for the return of the artifacts. And I think that might be a foundation that we can build on specifically for this. But the idea is that on October 12th, 2025, our churches around the diocese would celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day, and we would provide a liturgy for that, probably a liturgy of lament. So look for that. That's exciting. Any questions? We're just running through stuff really fast. So let me know, talking a million miles a minute. Okay. Jordan, you want to talk about LGBTQ plus and gender?
Yeah. Yeah, I love to. I'd love to talk about it all day, but I'll keep it short. So yeah, I am the chair of the LGBTQ plus and gender justice subcommittee. And we do not have any resolutions that were passed at the last diocesan convention on this. But we do have many resolutions that were passed by general convention that guide our work and are at least our initial conversations of how this will move us forward within the diocese. So at General Convention in 2024, Resolution 66 reaffirmed commitment to LGBTQ plus inclusion, equity, and justice, and it called on different dioceses to support LGBTQ plus folks in worship and leadership and pastoral care. It also talked about acknowledging the church's role in past discrimination. And really, it's about fulfilling our baptismal covenant, about affirming the dignity of every human being is really what it comes down to. And so our goal in this subcommittee will be to promote LGBTQ plus inclusion, provide congregations with resources, and we're talking about a lot of stuff that will take it'll take years to develop and stuff, but this is kind of the big vision, right? Is to educate, to talk theology, and to just walk alongside allies and LGBTQ plus people in the community. And also a part of this subcommittee too will just be to affirm what the national church at General Convention, what the broad church, or whatever term I'm supposed to use, at General Convention has passed for years, and that's just supporting women's reproductive health and promoting gender equity within the diocese and within the wider church. And so that's just a little short. We don't have any current initiatives on that, but if this sparks as something that you're interested in advancing that work on and being a part of these conversations from the ground floor, and I will say that for any of these subcommittees, let us know. We'd love to have you join us in this work together.
Great. And we do have a fourth subcommittee that was not a part of our original conversation. And that is an immigration subcommittee. Just because of everything that's happening in the world right now, it felt like we needed to have a voice there. And so there are a lot of things at the national church level that we can piggyback off of and get some direction from. But that we couldn't turn away from that right now. So that is a fourth subcommittee. I think we're questions. Keep asking that. One of the things we talked a lot about in our, so I mentioned, I just went through them really quickly around in our summit and in our meeting. There were things that came up. There were sort of categories like economic justice, racial justice, and then there were other kinds of work like formation and education, advocacy work, proclamation and prayer. And rather than creating committees around each of those things, we decided that each of the committees would do that work within those committees around that topic and probably work together on some of those things so that we should be introducing various classes, book studies. Advocacy work is a really interesting one. I think in our heart of hearts, we hope to be the voice of justice in the Diocese of Wyoming. What that looks like and how we do that is still a big question. What is the approval process for us being outspoken? But that is something that is important to us, to not be silent on these major issues as they play out in the world, in Wyoming, and all of that. So that's a big piece of it, and is still. Yes, I know, Melinda. Thank you. That is a big piece of the work that we want to do, and we're feeling our way in that. As I've gotten the impression, a lot of people and priests within the diocese are trying to feel their way. What is the right direction to take, and how loud a voice do we want to have? And we're working through that. Jordan.
Yeah.
Talk about
Yeah.
education
So
stuff.
for sure. So there's many ways to kind of get involved in the work that we're doing. Obviously, as I mentioned, if you'd like to just talk to me or Mary or April or anybody that's involved in the commission in this group so far, let us know, and we'd love to work with you and get you involved. But there also will be various educational opportunities. I think that's one of our goals as this equal justice group, is to help educate folks in the diocese about these various issues. And we've already been doing that. And you and your churches have already probably been doing this in some form for a long time. Our goal is to continue to provide those opportunities and resources for you, both on a congregational level and a diocesan level as well. And so that might look like doing book studies. Many of you are probably familiar with Sacred Ground, which is a race and faith dialogue series that the Episcopal Church developed. And yeah, there's I think there's nothing coming up as far as like any sort of book or dialogue series right now, because the
Well,
Sacred
there are
Ground series are
three,
already in session.
yeah,
Yeah.
there are 3 Sacred Ground courses in session, I guess. Yeah, currently.
Right.
We have Sacred Ground. We also, Jordan's been leading a book study on The Land Was Not Empty, Sarah Augustine's book, which has been great.
Yeah.
And doing things like that. Zoom gives us the opportunity to do that across the diocese. So we'll continue to do those things. I talked a little bit about advocacy. What does that mean? That means putting out positions, talking about having a voice around different issues that we're facing in our state and in the country. We've done a series, or we have signed on to a series of letters about particular issues. And I think we'll continue to do that work. And part of that will be about educating the people in our diocese around that work. And some of it will be more public. So that's the line we're trying to walk, and trying to figure out the direction forward on that. But a lot of that is educational, but it also can be advocacy. So that sort of crosses those lines. And that's sort of the bleeding edge for us, I think. And we are all, like I said, finding our way. What about pilgrimages?
Yes, I'll talk just quickly because one of them was already mentioned. Well, both of them were already mentioned. So our next pilgrimage is actually coming up here in a few weeks, and I know many of you on this call are going to be there. That's April 2nd through 6th, and this is a pilgrimage to Alabama. And this pilgrimage focuses on the intersection of faith and justice, particularly visiting these sites that were crucial to the civil rights movement, as well as, there'll be a lot of discussion and prayer and work as we do visiting those sites. And so kind of some of the highlights of that trip, if you're not familiar with it, is the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute, the Equal Justice Initiative Legacy Museum, the Edmund Pettus Bridge. And so this is the second year in a row that this pilgrimage has been offered. And I know I'm not sure if that's in the works for next year or not, but we still want to be able to offer opportunities and pilgrimages in particular to sites that further our understanding, further our faith, and further our education around issues of social justice. And I don't know how much you want me to say, Mary, about the Wind River pilgrimage. I think you all covered that pretty well.
Yeah, except for that I said that I thought maybe it was full, but we haven't even opened it up yet. So look for that from Bobby. But it'll only take 25 people, so it will go quickly, I think. Let's see. So the exciting thing, we have never done this before, and it's a little daunting, but a great thing, is that we are planning an Equal Justice Summit. It will be in Cody at the Heart Mountain. We're looking for our keynote. We have somebody in mind. We're just hoping to finalize that. I won't say it because then if she doesn't come through, you won't be disappointed. And I'm looking for the dates. I had them in my notes to you, Jordan.
September 5th.
September 5th through 7th. So as we're putting that together, we will get information out to all of you about how to register and what it's going to be. But we're really looking forward to that. And it's both a learning time, but also a time for all of us to come together and really talk about the work that we're doing, feed our souls through all of this. It's not always easy work. And so coming together and also looking at where we go from here, right? So by September, this structure will have been in place for a while, and what's next? To that point, after our meeting in Lander, Bobby developed an application process and people filled out the applications, and we got 9 additional. So we have the original 9 steering committee people, and then we got an additional 9 members. And that's kind of where we are right now in terms of the actual committee, but there's a lot of work to be done. And so what I would encourage all of you is as Jordan said, if you're interested in this stuff, reach out to us. How can you be involved in some of this work? I would also say that one of the most important things that you can do at this point is to educate yourself. And so if there are book studies, if you haven't done Sacred Ground when they come around again, jump on that. We all need to learn more on all of these issues. So at this point, that's, I think, the most important thing. And we will hopefully provide those opportunities for you all to jump in. Again, Alabama's full. We're going in a couple of weeks. I'm very excited, but we'll do it again next year. So just open yourself up to the possibility of being involved in educational things. And if they make you a little uncomfortable, even better. So that is the bulk of what we've got. What I'd love to do is just see if anyone has questions, wants to talk through any of this. We just threw a lot.
Looks like Megan Nichols has her hand up.
What's up?
I want to loop back to the reservation and the connection between this committee and the work that the Ethity Restoration Committee is doing. I see Shirley Wildman is on this call, and she is on that committee. And she could give us a quick update about what's happening there. Work on the museum is the focus of that at the moment, but they are talking about planning for other renovations on the circle. Shirley, do you want to speak to that?
Yes, we had a group that got together. Yeah, I don't even remember what the date was now, but they got together and they went to the parish hall and they went through and they asked the people from the reservation to give us their vision of what they would like to see happen with the parish hall. They did a rough draft of the project that they'd like to see and divided up the parish hall. And now they are working with the architect to make it maybe a little more formal and putting it together so that it can be presented. But they had a rough draft out there of how they'd like to see it being used, like for individuals with victims of maybe abuse, a place for them to stay, a food bank, a meeting hall for the reservation. So they have lots of ideas and putting it together. And like I said, soon they should have a rough draft from the architect of how it will be. We have a hand-drawn one now, but if they're working on putting the parish hall as our next project. The museum, they've run into a couple of things that they've had to change. So there's a change order in right now, but that's kind of where they are. But they are making progress on the museum, which is wonderful. And Crystal Seabearing is working on some issues there. So
Great. Thank you, Shirley. You know, that's
Oh, you
such a
recall,
huge project that I think of it as something separate from, but it's really important that we hear about it. So thank you for that, Shirley and Meg, for reminding us.
I have additional comments about that. Paul Chandler was the one who raised the significant amount of money for that museum project. You recall he got $2 million from the foundation, $2 million from the Sargent Foundation, and $2 million from the sale of HR. Further work on the circle will take significant fundraising, and we're keeping our eyes on that. And I believe that Christy Wallen is on this call too, and she is keeping her eyes on that too to see how Foundation can participate moving that forward. I want you to hear, though, in Shirley's report, her emphasis on the responsibility of the leadership on the reservation, that as white people, we are doing everything we can to help and support, but to let the leadership of the reservation and of our Father's house take the lead to make sure this project unfolds in a way that is just for them and does do the work, healing and reconciliation, as well as open up life for them on the reservation.
Also,
I have spoken.
Also a very good point, and that takes me back to the documentary, which is a project that I began 3 years ago, I think. What I love about that project is it's not my project. Like, I'm working on it, but I'm there to help facilitate, to help raise money. There's a young man named Juan Willow who just graduated from UW and is a filmmaker, and he is an Arapaho, and he's now the director, and it's his vision and Crystal Seabearing's vision and Roxanne's vision. And that's so important. We have a tendency as white people to go in and think we have the answers. And it's so important to just step back and say, you know, not step into that leadership role. It's been a great experience for me to try to partner and walk alongside this group of people. And even before the documentary has ever been made, the process has been so powerful, both for me, certainly, but for the group of people who are working on this and for other members of the community. It's been extraordinary, but you have to really hold things very softly and hold authority very softly, if at all. And allow the story to come from the people and not. So it's been a great experience.
Melinda.
I also want to bring up something that I know we heard from folks at convention, and it's a legit question about why is the diocese spending all this money on the reservation? And part of what informs that commitment is the fact that we as a church directly benefited across the country from the theft of land, from the theft of control of resources, from the genocide, frankly, that was perpetrated against the Indigenous people in this country. And there has been significant financial benefit that we have not seen. It was invisible. Part of On Sacred Ground, part of the Equal Justice Task Force, Equal Justice Initiative Task Force's job is to make that clear for us and to kind of part that veil so that we know and we understand that our wealth has been built on their poverty and suffering. And so part of reconciliation is being able to see that, to learn about it, being willing to learn about it, to acknowledge that that benefit is not all in the past. It continues to accrue today. And that investing in the reservation is part of acknowledging the benefits that we've received that they have not. And that if we are going to be just and if we are going to reconcile, we need to be willing to share that and restore what was rightfully theirs. So that's part of that investment on the circle and the restoration of land to the reservation, much of that basically we have not been using, we've just owned, is in part to really act like brothers and sisters.
Yes, thank you, Melinda.
Thanks, Melinda. And that reminds me that Standing Committee and the Diocesan Council are also working on some return of acreage that the Episcopal Church in Wyoming owns to the reservation. So as part of that, and that's moving along as well.
I don't underestimate what a big deal that is. People don't give back land. We're very bad of giving back land. I'm so proud that we're doing that. So thank you for that. It's a big deal.
Christy.
Yeah.
I wanted to highlight that our brothers and sisters at St. David's are doing some efforts to put together a apple orchard with trees, apple trees that are specifically through their DNA connected with the reservation with John Roberts, and their goal is to create a green space there. But that is peripheral to all of our work on this equal justice and supporting them, and the foundation's support of Mary's project and these larger the larger gifts before I entered the scene. But I think you have a good partner there with the foundation. And I think there's just a great opportunity to combine a lot of these projects into some sort of a capital, larger campaign. We really do need to, over the next several months, really investigate that because the need is there and the ask is compelling. I have spoken.
I think even some of these projects that aren't necessarily a part of the Equal Justice Initiative Task Force, why do we give such a big name? It's still important that we talk about them and that we support them in whatever ways we can. So I think keep talking about them.
You talk about names, Mary, that the Kim Lucas conversation with Canterbury, one of the questions she was asked was something about social justice. And she said, in the Episcopal Church in Colorado, I do not allow my churches to say the word social justice. It is all justice. And that's compelling, I think.
We might have to make a move to change our name.
Hunger for justice.
Right. The other thing I was going to say after what Melinda said is, if you have not taken sacred ground, do, because such an important, you learn so many lessons about our history that you maybe didn't know, and it's just becomes so clear. So, do we have other questions? Can't see everybody.
And if people have ideas about how we can get the word out, like Mary was saying, the education piece is so huge. Anne Marie and I had a conversation the day before yesterday, I think. She has done a lot of, obviously, advocacy work through Wyoming Interfaith Network, following in Jordan's shoes doing that. And the Faith Project, the Voices of Faith Project. So she's got some good ideas. We are going to create our own webpage tied to the diocesan website, but so it's linked there, but we'll be able to at least get our word out that way. But if you've all got ideas of where we could, take the show on the road and talk about sacred ground, and talk about justice, and talk about the work that we're doing around the diocese, other than at convention, we'd love to hear those thoughts.
I would also say that Wyoming does not have a history of being very vocal or outspoken on a lot of these issues, so this is new ground for us, and I think that's very exciting. I think we should have a voice on issues of, their moral issues, basically. So I'm excited about that, but it's new ground. A little scary.
Anne Marie, your face came up. Do you want to say something?
I'm in my car, so not too much, but yes, I'm excited about everything, and different educational opportunities as well. So if anybody would like to help with that, I'd be open to receiving your input.
Wonderful. Any other questions for any of the group, or comments or thoughts? Some of you I'll see tonight on our Alabama pilgrimage Zoom. We did have 2 that had to drop out of the pilgrimage because one of them happens to be a federal employee contracted person who was a bit concerned about the world we live in right now. But Meg is working hard to find some fill-ins for that. So hopefully we'll be at full force when we head to Birmingham. And next month, I'm sorry, Mary.
Just one thing. As I look through the group, a lot of you are already involved in this initiative. If you're not, I mean, we've done the applications, all that, but if you're not, reach out to us and we can just sort of figure out how we can plug you in, because
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. We ended up just sort of randomly. I mean, we ended up having a very diverse, across all kinds of demographics, age, gender, race, clergy, lay, area of the state. We had really a pretty diverse group. So yeah, we can always plug more in as your interests allow. Sheer luck. It was. It was. And we want to make sure we had somebody with a long gray beard, and so that was Mark Ship. These Zoom assemblies are scheduled for the first Thursday of every month at noon. Our April conversation was supposed to be Laura Gilbert talking about our confirmation classes, but she has a conflict that particular day. So we are asking our new Bishop Provisional, Todd Owsley, if he would like to take that slot, and we're hopefully will. I've reached out to him and I've not heard back yet, but hopefully he'll be able to talk about that. Many of us will be on the pilgrimage on that day, which is an issue. So we can talk about whether that is the best day to do this. But anyway, that's our game plan. Is the next Zoom assembly will be Bishop Owsley. So stay tuned for that. And if you have ideas of other topics you would like us to cover going forward, we've got a couple figured out between now and summertime. But if you have some ideas, let me know, and we'll get those on the schedule.
One thing I might just mention, and this is pertaining to this month's, our current Zoom assembly, and that is that in our last discussion around the Land is Not Empty book, we really had, there were some here that were present at that discussion. We really spent some time thinking through, and it felt like we were all kind of in a prayerful space as we were discussing. What does it look like? There are all these resolutions, right? At General Convention or at our annual convention, you could make all kinds of statements, and statements are good and fine. But what does it look like, in fact, to either not overstep the mark in those statements, and like speak for people whose voices are still being marginalized by that speaking, if that makes sense? What does it look like to actually step into action, not just words, right? So we were wrestling around, what does that action look like? And then again, where do we overstep the mark in our action, right? Like, so, you know, what Megan's good word about, we really absolutely need to be doing the, like, we might be facilitating things like financially, but like, what does it look like, right, to in fact ensure that, for example, our Indigenous brothers and sisters are leading in the space in a way that is addressing actual needs, right? That they see, and so it's pretty complex, and I think we all are kind of wrestling with some of these questions, because most of us, and I know not all of us, but many of us are pretty white, you know. So just you know, there's an acknowledgement. I just want to also acknowledge that is our reality as a diocese, pretty significantly. And so what does that look like for us? And, you know, I think we also, and I'm just going to say this out loud, it's controversial. Sorry, I'm throwing it out right in the last few minutes. I know there are people here who disagree with me, but I think we really need to wrestle with the legacy of John Roberts in a way that we haven't yet done. I'll just put it that way. So, and we can, that can be a conversation for additional years and months. So, yeah.
Way to leave us with food for thought, April. Yes. Very definitely. Yes, when I said we were a racially diverse group on our committee, I meant we do have, I believe, I think we have two of Melinda. We have Melinda, Randy Belton is on. We've got a Native American, two Native Americans, and we have a Latino. So we are very well represented.
Really good for Wyoming.
How did you come up with two Melindas?
The other Melinda.
What the heck are
Don't
you
ask
talking
that
about?
question, Randy.
Just
if you
got
don't
two
know the answer.
Melindas.
She's got
That'd
such
be
a big
like-
personality, right? She's
Maybe 1.5 Melindas, but I mean, how did it end up being Melinda?
Because your face wasn't up here.
It just, yeah, but I was listening intently.
Okay.
So,
Good work.
two
Good work.
Melindas and a Randy.
Yes, we have a Randy and we have a Melinda. And we have a
I would also like to throw out at the last second that The Land is Not Empty by Sarah Augustine is an excellent book to introduce you to the depth of what we're involved in here with this task force, but also that it's not about the past, it's about right now. And the things that we as the Episcopal Church, and also as the Episcopal Church in Wyoming, because of our investments, are participating in. And we really need to have a better understanding of that going forward. And that book is incredible. It's short, it's easy to read, it's hard to hear because it's painful. But it's the kind of thing we have to know to be able to wrestle with how we're actually going to bring equal justice. And I like that term because I think we talk about justice all the time and it's not included everybody. So it's really important to say we're talking about equal justice for everybody. But that's one of those books that even if you feel like you don't know anything already, you don't have to. And by the time you're done with that book, you will know a lot. So I highly recommend it.
Absolutely. And we may do another book study or two on that same book. We can offer more because it's really foundational, I think. And again, those of you who have the ability to go on the Wind River Pilgrimage in May, as soon as that registration comes out, hop on, because having Sarah with us on that journey will be so enriching for all of us. So
Thanks for inviting us, Bobby.
that's where we go. Thanks for headlining today, Mary and Jordan and April. And